You know, people often say be kind to others or be nice to others because you just never know what they may be going through. And you know what? That is very true. You never know what people may be going through. And I say that because today I was at the job and a colleague mentioned that you never know what other people are going through. So be nice to other people. And the reason he said that is because, well, first of all, let me back up. I called this fellow a colleague, and he is, except he doesn't work where I work, but he frequently visits the property. He makes deliveries to the property where I work. He works for another company. This happened today when he told me that. Probably, shoot, what? Well, let's just say a few days ago. A co-worker of his at his company that works in another department who happens to be a sales rep at his company had come by prior a few days ago, and he was kind of up in arms. You know, he was upset, and what he told me that the reason why he was upset is because there was a shooting at his job. One of the employees at his job murdered another employee, and he told me that on the day it happened. He didn't tell me, give me any names, but the names of those two individuals, the guy that got killed and the killer, were in the news the next day. So he was all up in arms about that, and we were talking about the same subject prior to today, me and this other guy, and he mentioned about a previous conversation that he and I had where, you know, you just never know what people are going through. And so fast forward to the day, this other guy from his company shows up to make a delivery, and he's talking about that. And he mentioned it, and he breathed a sigh of relief because the guy that actually killed the other coworker shot him multiple times. The guy that killed the other coworker, he ran at first, but then he decided that it wasn't in his best interest to try to run, and he later turned himself into the police. And so, you know, it became clear that the reason why the delivery guy, driver, and the sales guy were so up in arms because the guy technically had been on the run, and they were like, well, you know, what if he's still upset and he comes back to try to get some other people, or if he's out looking for other people that he's mad at. So they were a little paranoid. And then it dawned on me, kind of, sort of, I'm like, well, why are y'all paranoid? You know, if that's your philosophy about be nice to people, you never know what they're going through. The way they were talking, it made me think that they weren't fulfilling the philosophy that they were preaching. I mean, I tell you what, in this day and age, not many people are. And the reason why I think that is because everybody's caught up in their own bubble anyway. I said to this delivery driver today, you know what, man? You say you never know what other people might be going through. Some people may be going through some problems. And I kind of stopped him in his tracks. And I said, you know what, man? Everybody's going through something. And that's the problem. Everybody's got some kind of mental or emotional issue that they're grappling with. And that being said, it prevents them from really taking in consideration what somebody else might be going through. And then the unfortunate thing is that one person is going through their little emotional issues, and then another person's going through their emotional issues, and then they clash, and kapaya. You just never know what could happen. In this case, somebody brings a gun to work, pulls it out, and kills another employee. And that's sad. What's interestingly sad and a little bit puzzling, the person that killed the other guy, they said he had just turned 22 years old, and that he was getting ready to quit, that would have been his last day. The guy that he killed was twice his age, just about twice his age, early 40s, like 41 or something like that. And that guy had been with the company for a long time. Now, how their paths crossed the way they did, I don't know. But from what I hear, they worked together closely, and one was, I'm taking it was the younger guy that was the older guy's assistant. And what the older guy did to deserve getting shot to death, only God knows, or if it was even warranted. I doubt that an action that drastic to that level is warranted, but nevertheless, it happened. So, again, first of all, let me say, oftentimes, people that age, like 21, 22, they grew up in an era where moral teachings and having a mentor that teaches morals and values is slim pickings. So a lot of these kids, well, I call them kids just because they're at that age, but they're not really kids, they're adults. But a lot of them just don't have the capacity to truly understand a big picture of what could be at stake if they act so impulsively, being driven by the emotion of rage, and do something so drastic. They don't have the capacity to think big picture wise, and that's kind of sad, and that's, I believe, due to lack of mentorship because of the era that they've been raised in. And but here's a thought. Technically, sometimes being morally correct doesn't seem fair. Because after all, you could be going through your very own emotional problems, right? You can be having personal issues, whether they're emotional, whether they're mental, whether they're a relationship, whether they're financial, health, whatever the case may be, whether it be health, relationship, financial problems, it affects you mentally. You know, it promotes mental anguish, frustration, and it makes mental clarity hard to achieve. So that being said, it also makes it hard to really, really take into consideration what somebody else is going through. Because let's say you got somebody caught up in a whirlwind, right? And you got another person caught up in a whirlwind, another whirlwind. You're so caught up in your whirlwind, the fast spinning, and it's got you so dizzy, you really can't stop the focus to make sure somebody else is okay until your whirlwind settles down and you've regained your spiritual ground. Other than that, you really can't. Well, it gets tough. I'm not gonna say you can't, but it's tough to really take somebody else's plight into consideration. And if that other person's an adult, it's not necessarily fair because, after all, they're adults. And what gives anybody the right to say you're responsible for walking on eggshells around others because they're going through some problems? I know it's kind of a rough way to put it, but ultimately that's what it amounts to. So, what can you do? Well, watch your own back. I mean, you understand that you're having issues. If you're having issues, you understand that. So what you should do is seek to keep your own emotions in check and try to put your own issues in their proper perspective. That way you can be focusing on you exclusively without having to worry about somebody else. And if you do it like that, thinking about keeping your own emotional situation in check, thinking about trying to put your own personal problems in their proper perspective, if you focus on that and you do it in the right way, you're simultaneously focusing by default on the other person in such a way that you're being nice to that person, for lack of a better way to put it. You're being fair to that other person that's going through issues. So you can technically look out for the other by looking out for yourself psychologically. How's that grab you? Because I tell you what, a lot of volatile things going on out there, and you don't want to get caught up in anybody else's whirlwind because there's no telling what could happen. I mean, you just don't know, as this driver said earlier, what's going on in somebody's head. And there are a lot of people out there that are looking to throttle somebody else because they think it'll alleviate a lot of emotional pain, and it really won't. But they don't know that. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now. I appreciate you listening to this talk. If you need any kind of help focusing on yourself in the right way, in the psychological, spiritual way, I have some help for you. This book, The Power of Spiritology by Dario Thomas. It's on sale at Amazon.com. And it can show you some pretty cool techniques, easy to learn, easy to implement techniques to where you can focus on your own situation without having to worry about others. Also, without having to worry about others doing something really crazy and ignorant to you. Subscribe to the Spiritology Television Network on YouTube. If you know anybody that would be interested in these messages, these type of spiritual messages and lessons, share the link, urge them to subscribe. And again, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. God bless.